Can you hand me my phone? That's what William said right before the screen lit up in my hand. I wish I'd never looked. Are you going to tell her before I start showing? My heart just stopped because I knew two things at once. He was cheating and she was pregnant. I handed the phone back like nothing had happened. That part still bothers me sometimes. My face didn't crack. My voice didn't shake. I just locked the screen, passed it to him, and said, "Here." William took it, slid it into his pocket, and went right back to talking about dinner. "Do we still have chicken?" he asked, standing in front of the fridge like he hadn't just detonated my life with one glowing sentence. I remember staring at the cutting board on the counter and forcing myself to answer. "Yeah, I think so." He nodded. "Okay, I'll make rice." Rice. That was the level of normal he was operating on. I stood there in our kitchen in North Park, with the late San Diego light coming in through the window, and realized I had no idea who I was married to. He kept talking. Something about traffic. Something about work. Something about how his week had been brutal and how Kevin Scott was making things harder because he kept changing numbers on a client account. I heard maybe every fifth word. The rest was just noise. Inside my head, that one line kept replaying. Are you going to tell her before I start showing? Before. Not if. Before. That meant they had already talked about me. More than once. It meant there was already a plan, or at least a delay. It meant my marriage wasn't just cracking. It had already been turned into a scheduling problem between my husband and his pregnant mistress. I helped make dinner. That was the part one hated most afterward. The fact that I stood there and rinsed vegetables while he moved around me like we were still us. Like this was still our life. At one point, he touched my lower back as he moved past me, and I had to grip the counter to stop myself from jerking away. "You okay?" he asked. I looked at him. He had that same concerned face he always used when he wanted to seem present. Soft eyes. Slight crease between his brows. The expression of a good husband noticing his wife was tired. "I'm fine," I said. And I knew right then I wasn't going to confront him until I knew everything. Because if I confronted him too early, he would get to shape the story. He was good at that. Not in some dramatic mastermind way. Just in the quiet, slippery way that works on decent people. He filled silence fast. He explained before you even finished asking. He made things sound messy instead of cruel, complicated instead of deliberate. By the time you'd sorted out what he'd actually said, you were already reacting to his version. I didn't want his version. I wanted the truth. That night, I barely slept. William was next to me in bed like always, one arm bent under his pillow, breathing steadily. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying the last few months in reverse. The late nights. The sudden need for privacy with his phone. The way he started showering as soon as he got home. The random walks in Balboa Park when he said he needed to clear his head. The fake work stress. The emotional distance that always somehow became my responsibility to be patient about. Around 3 a.m, I turned my head and looked at him in the dark. He looked peaceful. That made me angry for the first time. Not loud anger. Not the kind that explodes. The colder kind. The kind that settles in. The next morning, he left early. He kissed my forehead before he went. "Don't work too hard," he said. The front door clicked shut, and I sat on the edge of the bed for about 10 seconds, listening to the silence. Then I got up, walked straight to the dresser, picked up his iPad, and checked if his messages synced. They did. Her name was Amy Moore. I stared at it for a second before opening the thread, like there was still some chance I'd misunderstood what I saw. There wasn't. The messages went back 8 months. 8 months. Not just flirting. Not just sex. It was a relationship. Good morning texts. Pet names. Jokes. Complaints. Reassurance. Plans. Doctor appointments. Fear. Excitement. All the intimate little pieces people use to build something together. And there, over and over again, was that word. We're going to figure this out. We'll be okay. We just need a little more time. We're a team. I sat down on the bed because my legs stopped feeling reliable. There were messages about me too. She's been suspicious lately. She's distant. I'm trying to keep things stable until I know what to do. Stable. That word made my stomach turn. Because what he meant by stable was comfortable for him. Stable meant I was still cooking dinner with him and paying half the rent and believing his lies while he prepared his next life. There was one message from Amy that I read 3 times. "I'm not hiding forever, William." And his response came 2 minutes later. "You won't have to. I promise." I took screenshots of everything. The pregnancy message. The promises. The lies about our marriage. The timelines. The places. The messages that proved he was sleeping in my bed while planning a future with her. Then I emailed them to a private account and deleted every trace I could think of. When I got to work, I felt like I was underwater. I'm an administrative coordinator at a dental office, so my whole day is scheduling, insurance, paperwork, answering calls, fixing small problems before they become bigger ones. Usually I'm good at it. That day I entered the same patient details twice and forgot to call someone back after promising I would. Donna Lewis, one of the hygienists, leaned against my desk around noon and said, "You look pale. You okay?" I almost laughed at how absurd that question felt. "Didn't sleep well," I said. She nodded. "Go eat something." I went out to my car instead and called a lawyer. Her name was Susan Jones. Her office was in the Gaslamp Quarter. Her voice was calm, direct, and practical in a way that steadied me almost immediately. "Tell me what's happening," she said. So I did. Not the whole emotional part. Just the facts. My husband is having an affair. I have screenshots. I believe the other woman is pregnant. I need to know what I should do before I confront him. She asked the right questions. Bank accounts. Lease. Debt. Shared assets. Insurance. Retirement. Bills. She didn't ask whether I was devastated. She didn't ask whether I wanted to save the marriage. She asked what I had access to and what I needed to protect. "Do not warn him before you've copied everything important," she said. "Move carefully. Quietly. If he thinks you know, he may change passwords, move money, or start rewriting events in writing. Assume he'll protect himself first." That line stayed with me the rest of the day. Assume he'll protect himself first. Because that's exactly what he'd been doing for 8 months. For the next week, I became someone I didn't fully recognize. Calmer. Colder. More organized than I'd ever been during our actual marriage. I opened a separate account and redirected part of my paycheck there. Not enough to raise suspicion. Enough to breathe. I copied statements. Took photos of documents. Saved lease information. Looked at apartments in Hillcrest and Mission Valley during my lunch break. Wrote down passwords. Made lists. At home, I watched him. Once you know, everything looks different. It's almost sickening how obvious it becomes. He smiled at his phone and turned the screen away from me. He showered the second he got home. He volunteered too many explanations for little things. He used Kevin Scott's name as an alibi so often that I finally texted Kevin myself. "Hey, William said you guys were meeting Saturday. Want me to send snacks with him?" Kevin replied less than a minute later. "No plans with me, but tell him I appreciate the thought." I stared at that text until the screen dimmed. That was when the last soft corner in me went hard. Because an affair is one thing. Still horrible. Still enough. But building fake alibis with the names of coworkers, coming home and eating dinner with me after spending the day lying to both of us, standing in our kitchen and asking if we had chicken while another woman was pregnant with his child, that wasn't confusion. That was management. I found Amy on social media 3 days later. Her profile wasn't private. That surprised me. For some reason, I expected someone more hidden. More secretive. But she looked like a normal woman in San Diego. Coffee photos. Beach photos. Friends. A picture with a blonde woman tagged as Lisa Moore, who I later learned was her sister. A vague post that said, "Big changes coming soon." Another that said, "Life looks different than I thought it would." I stared at her face for a long time. I was trying to find what made her different from me. What made her worth the risk. What made her worth blowing up a marriage over. But all I saw was a woman. A regular woman. That made me angrier than if she'd looked glamorous or calculated or cruel. Because suddenly it wasn't a movie anymore. It was just a selfish man creating damage in 2 ordinary women's lives at the same time. I messaged her. "Hi, this is Anna King, William's wife. I think we need to talk." She answered almost immediately. "I was wondering when you'd message me." That sentence hit so hard I had to set my phone down for a second. Not because it was dramatic. Because it meant she knew this wasn't clean. She knew enough to expect me. I called her before I could overthink it. She answered on the second ring. "Hi," she said quietly. Her voice was softer than I expected. Nervous. Young, but not childish. Tired. For a second, I didn't know what to say. I had imagined this moment differently. Sharper. I thought I'd sound controlled and devastating. Instead, the first thing I asked was, how long? She was quiet for a beat. 8 months. I sat down at my kitchen table. 8 months. That covered our anniversary. Thanksgiving. Christmas. My birthday. His birthday. Ordinary Sundays. Random Tuesdays. All the time I'd spent asking him if he was okay and believing him when he said he was just stressed. "Did you know about me?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "But not like this." "What does that mean?" "It means he told me your marriage was basically over," she said. "He said you were still living together because of the lease. He said you'd both checked out and were just avoiding the mess of ending it." I laughed then, but it didn't sound like humor. "He sleeps next to me every night," I said. "He kisses me goodbye in the morning." Silence. Then, very quietly, she said, "He told me you stopped caring." That was the line that made tears come to my eyes. Not the cheating. Not the pregnancy. That? Because it was such a specific theft. He wasn't just betraying me. He was rewriting me. Turning me into a cold, distant wife in the story he needed to tell in order to feel justified. "I asked him if he'd told you," she said. That's the message you saw, isn't it? Yes. I'm 13 weeks, she said after a pause. 13 weeks. The number hit differently than the sentence had. It made everything concrete. Medical. Ongoing. Established. This wasn't a scare. This wasn't panic. This was a pregnancy moving forward while I was still folding his laundry. We talked for almost an hour. We compared timelines. She told me about weekends in La Jolla when he said he had work trips. I told her he'd come home and crawl into bed next to me afterward. She told me he said we hadn't been intimate in months. I told her that was a lie. She told me he said he was trying to find the right moment to tell me. I told her he had looked me in the eye the night before and asked if we still had chicken. At one point, neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then she said, I don't think I know who he is. And that was the exact moment I stopped seeing her as the enemy. Not as a friend. Not as innocent. But not as the villain either. Because the deeper we got into the timeline, the more obvious it became that William had built two realities with himself at the center of both. In mine, he was the stressed husband trying to hold things together. In hers, he was the trapped man on the verge of freedom. In both versions, he got sympathy. In both versions, he got to delay consequences. So I sent her everything. Every screenshot that mattered. The messages where he talked about fixing things with me. The messages where he called her baby. The contradictions. The dates. The proof that he had been promising both of us a future he couldn't possibly deliver. After a few minutes, she sent one line back. I feel sick. I stared at it and thought, good. Not because I wanted to punish her exactly. Because for the first time, someone else was looking at him without his filter. A few days later, William came home early. One look at his face told me she had confronted him. He looked pale. Tense. Tight around the mouth. Can we talk? He asked. I was already sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of tea I hadn't touched. Sure. He stayed standing for a second, then sat down across from me. I made a mistake, he said. There it was. Not truth. Not confession. A mistake. How big a mistake? I asked. He rubbed both hands over his face. I met someone. I said nothing. It wasn't supposed to happen. There are lies so insulting they actually help you. They clear things up. Because in that moment, hearing him reduce 8 months, a pregnancy, hundreds of lies, fake alibis, and 2 separate relationships into it wasn't supposed to happen, I stopped needing anything from him emotionally. She's pregnant, I said. He froze. Actually froze. It wasn't the line itself that mattered. It was the look on his face. Shock, then panic, then calculation. He was trying to figure out what I knew and how much damage had already been done. Who told you that? He asked. I almost smiled. That's your first question? He started talking faster then. The usual pattern. Confused. Unhappy. Didn't know how to tell me. Didn't mean for it to go this far. Didn't want to hurt me. Didn't know what he wanted. Was trying to protect everyone. Was afraid. Felt trapped. He threw words at me like they might form a bridge back to safety if he used enough of them. I let him talk. Then I asked, did you tell her our marriage was basically over? Silence. Did you tell her I stopped caring? He looked away. Did you tell her we weren't sleeping together? His jaw tightened. And then I said the one thing I had been holding. I talked to Amy. His whole body changed. That was the moment. The real one. Not when I saw the message. Not when I took screenshots. This. Watching him realize the 2 women he had kept separate had compared notes and that he no longer controlled the story. She showed you what? He asked. No, I said. I showed her. He stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. Anna, why would you do that? That question still amazes me. Not because of the nerve. Because he meant it. In his mind, I had done the aggressive thing. I had created the problem. Truth was a weapon because lies had been the structure holding his life up. Because she deserved to know who she was having a baby with, I said. And because I deserved not to be the last person in the room. He started pacing. Talking about how upset Amy was. How she wasn't answering him now. How everything was spiraling. How I'd made things harder. Harder. As if the hard part was Amy being upset. Not me sitting across from my husband while he talked about his mistress's emotional state like that was the crisis. Get your things, I said. He stopped. What? Get your things and leave. Anna, come on. We need to talk this through. No, I said. You need to leave. Then he switched tactics. Softer voice. Sad eyes. The version of him that used to work on me. I know you're hurt. I stood up. Hurt? I said. You got another woman pregnant while sleeping beside me every night and telling me work was stressful. Don't insult me by calling that hurt. He stared at me. And I think that was when he understood this was actually over. Not because I was yelling. Not because I was dramatic. Because I was calm in a way he couldn't manipulate. He packed a duffel bag that night. Laptop. Work clothes. Toiletries. Chargers. The most ordinary items in the world. It felt obscene, watching a marriage end through socks and shaving cream and the zipper sound of a duffel bag closing. He paused at the door like he expected me to stop him. I didn't. After he left, I sat on the couch in the silence and cried so hard I scared myself. Not because I wanted him back. Because everything was finally real. That's what people don't get about betrayal sometimes. You can know something and still not have fully landed inside it yet. You can see the proof, make the calls, contact the lawyer, tell the mistress, ask him to leave, and still have a part of your body lag behind your brain. Mine caught up that night. The next few weeks were ugly in the quietest possible way. Susan Jones handled most of the communication once I told William I'd retained counsel. That changed him immediately. He stopped sounding emotional and started sounding practical. Lease. Utilities. Shared furniture. Bank transfers. Storage. Mailing address. It hurt seeing how fast he adapted. How quickly our marriage turned into admin. Sarah Davis, my best friend, came over the first Saturday after he left. She brought coffee, boxes, tape, and the exact kind of anger that felt useful. She didn't waste time saying things like, everything happens for a reason. She looked around our townhouse, picked up a marker, and said, tell me what's yours first. That sentence almost made me cry again. Because it cut through the fog. Not metaphorically. Literally. What was mine? My dishes. My books. My grandmother's lamp. My winter coats. The blue ceramic bowl I bought in Santa Barbara before we were even married. The framed print in the hallway. The duvet cover he never liked. My side of the closet. My files. My body. My future. The answer kept getting bigger. William texted too much at first. Please talk to me. I never wanted this. I'm sorry. I'm ashamed. Can we meet? I didn't respond. Then he sent a long email that somehow managed to say he loved me, missed me, felt lost, regretted everything, and still didn't fully admit what he'd done in plain language. Everything was blurred. Passive. Confused. A mess he had found himself in. I read it once and closed it. Because by then I understood something important. He didn't want honesty. He wanted relief. Amy texted me one last time during that period. He told me he wanted to fix things with you. I read that and just stared at it. Then I wrote back, he doesn't know what he wants. He knows what he wants to avoid. She never replied. I heard through a mutual connection later that she was staying with her sister Lisa for a while and making decisions without him at the center. Good. That was probably the smartest thing either of us did. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Hillcrest 3 weeks after William left. Laura White, the leasing agent, showed it to me on a warm Tuesday evening. The place was small. The kitchen was narrow. The bedroom window faced another building. The bathroom mirror was slightly warped around the edges. I loved it instantly. Not because it was perfect. Because it was mine. Mine without compromise. Mine without a liar carrying on a second life behind it. Mine without tension humming under the walls. Donna Lewis helped me carry in boxes after work one night. Sarah came again that weekend with takeout and too much paper towel and a bottle of wine I barely touched. Between the two of them, the apartment slowly started looking like a place where a woman lived instead of a woman had fled to. William's mother, Carol King, left me a voicemail about a week after the move. It was exactly what I expected. Families go through difficult times. People make mistakes. Marriage is hard. Emotions are high. Compassion matters. I deleted it before the end. His father, Thomas King, texted once. I'm sorry for my son. I kept that message, not because it fixed anything, but because it was the only sentence from that family that didn't try to make me responsible for being graceful about his betrayal. I never learned every detail of what happened between William and Amy after I exposed everything, but I learned enough. She didn't become his happy ending. There was no clean transition from wife to mistress to new family. No soft landing. No romantic reward for following his truth. Whatever fantasy he'd been feeding himself about how this would unfold collapsed the second both women in his life started working from the same information. Last I heard, she was keeping her distance. Last I heard, he was alone. And that mattered more than I thought it would. Not because I needed him punished in some dramatic way. Not because I wanted him miserable forever. But because there is something sickening about the idea of someone blowing up your life and then walking straight into a better one. I didn't need revenge. I needed reality to catch up with him. About 6 weeks after I moved out, I drove to Sunset Cliffs after work. I stood by the railing with the wind in my hair and watched the water for a long time. It was one of those evenings when San Diego looks unfairly beautiful. Like the world should have the decency to look worse when your life does. I thought I'd feel triumphant by then. I didn't. I felt lighter. Sadder in some ways. Clearer. Because the truth is, even when leaving is the right thing, you still grieve. You grieve the marriage you thought you had. The person you thought you were with. The version of yourself who was still trying to make sense of his distance as stress instead of betrayal. You grieve your own innocence. Your own trust. Your own stupid little ordinary routines that suddenly feel contaminated. I leaned against the railing and thought about that first moment in the kitchen. The message. The chicken. The fact that he had been speaking to me in one life while building another in secret. And somewhere in all of that, I realized the thing I was most proud of wasn't that I'd left. It was that I stopped helping him carry the lie. That was the real shift. For months, maybe longer, I had been doing what so many women do without even realizing it. Smoothing over tension. Explaining away distance. Being patient. Being understanding. Letting strange behavior become normal because confronting it felt harder than absorbing it. Handing over trust. Handing over benefit of the doubt. Handing over the cover of normalcy. The second I stopped handing those things over, his whole other life started collapsing under its own weight. That wasn't revenge. That was gravity. And if I have a final thought about all of it, it's this. I did love him. That's the humiliating part people don't like to say out loud after betrayal. I loved him while he was lying. I loved him while he was disappearing in little ways. I loved him while he was building a future with someone else and coming home to me after. Love doesn't vanish the second truth shows up. It lingers. It embarrasses you. It makes you grieve someone who does not deserve the softness you still feel. But loving him doesn't mean I owe him silence. Loving him doesn't mean I should have helped him manage the timing of my own humiliation. Loving him doesn't mean I was wrong to make sure Amy knew the truth. Some people will say I should have walked away quietly. Some people will say telling her was revenge. Some will say I did it because I wanted him to lose both of us. Maybe part of me did. I'm honest enough to admit that. But I also know this. He was never going to tell the truth in a way that cost him anything. He would have delayed, managed, explained, protected himself first, like Susan warned me he would. He would have kept one hand on me and one hand on her and called that confusion until somebody forced reality into the room. So I did. And whatever happened after that belongs to him. Because I didn't destroy his life. I just stopped protecting the version of it that depended on me staying in the dark.